Malta's secret elongated skulls are not human, ancient alien heads? Well, this is a statue of Pharaoh Akhenaten and Amenhotep IV. He changed his name to Akhenaten. But we know that his DNA was very intense compared to human DNA, thus, he was not considered to be Homo sapien. So, what are these elongated skulls that were recovered from the Hypogeum in the area of Malta, the island of Malta, basically south of Spain, between Spain and Italy? So, you see that it's missing a suture. Humans have an extra suture of the skull. This does not have a suture, meaning this is not Homo sapiens. Well, of course, we know we have had many extinction level events in the past. Could this be one of the hominids or Homo sapien type races that used to live? Now, the discovery of strange elongated skulls around the globe have baffled scientists for decades. We know that they've been found in Peru, they've been found in Egypt, they've been found in America, North America. This is in Malta. This includes 25 human skeletons with elongated skulls excavated from Muga archaeological site in northeast China as well, the Dragon Man skull, the Sealand skull, etc. What are these elongated heads? Perhaps they were experiments of other civilizations with humans. Why did they do this, and what do we know about that process? The appearances of these skulls date back to around 8,500 years before Christ, so they're 10,500 years old. It is believed that many of these elongated heads beings survived the Great Flood and reached specific points around the world. This is how they started other civilizations. Perhaps this could be the reason why humans have discovered remains of skulls with elongated heads spontaneously and in different parts of the world. In the various ancient cultures, there is mention of the dragon people, or the serpents, who are often described as being of great stature and with elongated heads. The ancient dragon bloodline is one that eventually became the bloodline of the dragon emperors. People with elongated skulls inhabited almost the entire planet, since they left much evidence that they traveled and were distributed all over the world. Some studies even suggest they may have been interplanetary gods, and if this is true, the elongated headed beings could have come from the stars to give us some knowledge. There's another place that provides more evidence, located in Malta, the archipelago of 3 islands of the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. The ancients built the only prehistoric underground temple known in the world as the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum. Hypogeum in Greek means basement. Inside the lower chamber of the temple necropolis, Maltese archaeologist Sir Themistocles Zammit discovered thousands of skeletal remains in the first decade of the 20th century, thousands of remains, and many of them were with elongated skulls. The origin of those remains was never determined. Now, until 1985, the unearthed skulls were on display at the National Museum of Archaeology. Strangely, Heritage Malta, the authority responsible for Malta's prehistoric heritage, removed them from public view around 30 years ago, and since then they have only been available to researchers by special permission. So why did Malta remove them from the museum? They don't want people to ask questions about elongated skulls with strange sutures on their skulls? Recently, the Hypogeum skulls again returned to display at the National Museum of Archaeology, but only 6 of the original 11 are still at the museum. In the studies carried out, it was determined that these skulls were unusual. They were without a middle of the fossa, and the sagittal suture was also missing on the skull. Photos and books by Dr. Anton Mifsud and his colleague Dr. Charles Savona Ventura, who first investigated the skulls, testify to their existence and abnormality. Vittoria di Cesare and Adriano Forgione of Hera magazine, Rome, Italy, were the only non-officials able to obtain permission to investigate the skulls. They published a very thorough article regarding their findings, and it seems that they were very impressed. Most interesting to them was the skull cap with the lengthened posterior. Their research confirms that the cranium was naturally long, and not as a result of bandaging or binding or boards, as was customary in ancient South American civilizations. Besides, it could not find evidence of median knitting, technically named sagitta, which is considered impossible by medics and anatomists. De Cesar and Forgione also did not discount that this find was particular to the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum. They went on in their article to draw parallels and conclusions relating to the Egyptian culture, so-called serpent priests, quote unquote. Meanwhile, Ms. Rodriguez Aguilera was running for office in Miami as a Republican when an interview of her alien abduction as a child resurfaced. Therein, she claimed the aliens had told her that, quote, there are 30,000 skulls different from those of human beings in a cave on the Mediterranean island of Malta, end quote. Is that so? Now, from an examination of the skeletons of the polished stone, it appears that the early inhabitants of Malta were a race of long-skulled people of lower medium height, akin to the early people of Egypt, who spread westward along the north coast of Africa, whence some went to Malta and Sicily, others went to Sardinia and Spain. Such deform in the skull can also be found in ancient Egypt. Unlike all previous pharaohs who were portrayed in excellent physical shape, Akhenaten's appearance is surprisingly strange. Almond-shaped eyes, a small abdomen, thin lips, and an elongated skull. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I have posted a recent video of Akhenaten's DNA being very, very intense as far as the genomes in his DNA strands compared to human Homo sapiens. So the almond-shaped eyes, small abdomen, thin lips, elongated skull he looks as if he has Marfan syndrome. But anyway, everything about Akhenaten was unusual, even his DNA. In 2015, Stuart Fleischman, an assistant professor of comparative genomics at Cairo University, and his team published the result of a 7-year study. They mapped the genomes of 9 ancient Egyptian pharaohs. 8 samples were completely normal, and the 9th one that belonged to Akhenaten was rather unusual. Fleischman and his team subjected the precious sample of ancient DNA to a process called polymerase chain reactions, PCR test, in the field of, that's what we know the PCR from what we have testing for COVID-19. Now, in the field of molecular biology, this technique is often used to replicate and amplify a single copy of a piece of DNA, giving researchers a clear picture of someone's genetic fingerprint. The results of the analysis of bone tissue taken from Akhenaten's skull showed that the bones of the skull are much denser and fundamentally different from other mummies of the same age and period. Moreover, Akhenaten's skull and skeleton are twice as dense and durable as that of modern humans. So who or what was Akhenaten really? A hybrid of an alien, a mutant, or a creature from another planet? If any of these is true, then there is a possibility that ancient aliens arrived on Earth in the distant past, resided near the Nile River, and lived among the locals. This article was originally published by Howes and Wise on Collector Spark. And let's remember that one of the last pharaohs of Egypt, Pharaoh Nectanebo, claimed that the Temple of Seth, where we have the Abydos hieroglyphs showing rockets, airplanes, helicopters, submarines, tanks, he said that was never to be destroyed because that is where the overlords of Egypt actually landed, and they came from the skies. So he actually believed that, yes, the overlords or the gods, quote-unquote, of Egypt were extraterrestrial, and they were not of this earth. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.